Welcome back to episode 4 of Erickson Brothers Podcast. I'm joining you here today with my friend, brother, and co-host, Mr. Matt Erickson. I am Jeff Erickson here in sunny San Diego. Tuning in. Matt, how are you doing today?
Doing well. I feel a little sunburnt, which is weird to say in February in New York City, but I'm doing good.
Good, bro. Tell me what's been up for today. What have you been up to?
Well, today I went shooting on this. We were shooting like clay pigeons on this range. So it was basically like 10 different huts or like stands, they called them. And our guide would like decide, he would pick where the clays would come from, and you'd shoot, and he'd launch them, and you try to shoot them, and you get 10 rounds, and there's 10 different stands. So I shot 100 shots and I hit 47 of the 100, which isn't bad. It seemed pretty like middle of the road, and I for the group we were with, and I think especially for it being my first time, I think I did well. But it was cool. I think it's something that would be good, like boys' day / like bachelor party. Yeah, it was a good day that I just got back from. So,
Were you any good?
what are you been up to?
Okay, I was just gonna ask if you were any good at shooting.
47 out of 100. I mean, that's a fail in most standards, but I think when you're trying to do something you've never done before, and you've got like a little small softball size thing going across the air at a certain speed, I think it's pretty good.
Yeah, it's a good batting average.
It's great batting average. Not a good test score, great batting average. I think we're going for more test scores here. I think the pros, they are in like the 90 to 100 range percentage wise. But it was cool. Like, and everybody was wearing their like hunting gear and stuff, but we were just shooting clays. So
Yeah,
it was good. It was good to get out of the city.
good to hear.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What's your week looked like?
Yeah, I'm just at my office right now, in San Diego, and had some things I had to knock out today. But yeah, everything's been going really well. Everything's super busy over here, which is good. Just doing some training, doing some client calls, and yeah, pretty fired up. Got a lot of good things moving. So yeah, no complaints. But yeah, let's dive right into it. What do you want to talk about today?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So one of the conversations we were talking about, it was on the way back from the shooting range. We were talking about um, finance. So the group I was with is this Bible study. It's a group of men that I've been going to a Bible study with since I've moved here. And uh, I think 95% of the guys in this Bible study work in finance in New York, whether they do investment banking or private equity, or they do M&A law, what have you, broad range, but all within finance. So we were talking about independent financial sponsors, which is basically it's like a one. It seemed to me that you could it's as simple as like a one deal private equity company that um you, like your group, say it's like it could just be you in theory, or it could be a group of however many people, but you find a business that is being sold from an investment bank, and then you uh run your financial models and do your numbers and determine, okay, like we can retract this uh company, and we can give it like x bid price, and with this amount of leverage, like here's a good deal. And what they do all this pre-work, and then they go out and find investors to invest in the private in the company that they're looking at. And they were saying that this is a good way for people to start out in private equity, because oftentimes when traditionally when a private equity company is starting, they raise capital And when investors are determining whether or not to invest into the private equity company, they say like, okay, like what's your background? What's your track record? What deals have you done? What's your hurdle rate? What can I expect pretty much if I put my money in? And that's a traditional private equity company, but it's independent financial sponsor, which what I explained 90 seconds ago is that you find the deal first and then you go out and look for the investors, look for the people that are going to do it. Because when you go to these investors and they ask your background and you don't have anything for them, then it's tough. But if you have a limited background and you say, here's this company, here's where we project it in 5 to 7 years, here's the money's gonna make, and here's what we can pay you back, then investors are a lot more willing to lend to these sponsors. So when uh, uh, pause, Jeff and I a few months ago were looking at doing seller financing and are continuing to look at seller financing as a way to start to own real estate because we do not have the capital to buy a company per se, but if somebody who owns it is willing to do seller financing, or we can find a sponsor, we bring them a duplex, a fourplex, an eightplex, a 16plex, whatever it is. We've already run our numbers on the condo, on the apartment, and then we get the capital from there. So it's basically the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Seller financing and real estate and independent financial sponsors. It's just in seller financing, you have your real estate property, whether you have the condo, you have the eightplex, and then in independent financial sponsors, you have the business and whatever that is. So, but at the end of the day, you're bringing the deal to the investor. You're already bringing them deal flow. You're saying how much money that it will get you, what the return will be, and the deal flow. The benefit for the investor is that they don't need to go out and find deal flow. They know that the deal is coming to them. They don't have to do any work. They just put their equity into the business and they'll get paid back. So very interesting concept. I'm wondering what your initial thoughts are.
Yeah, a couple initial thoughts. First one, why I think seller financing is fascinating is like with what I'm doing, I can't qualify for a loan, a traditional loan through a bank for at least 2 years because you need 2 years of working experience. As a 1099 employee, 1099 contractor, you need 2 years of track record in order to qualify for anything. So traditional loan is off the table for 2 years. And I don't want to have to wait 2 years in order to start getting like accessing this debt, especially since it's such a great time to get in the market now. So that's why I really like seller financing is because it's not traditional. And you have to be a little bit more creative, which I like. Next thing is when you have like a credible person, when you kind of have somebody that has the industry experience, very reputable, has multiple exits, right? The credibility in the deal comes from the individual. Is what credibility comes from the individual traditionally, right? Yeah. But if you have the apartment complex or you already have the business, and then you have somebody that doesn't necessarily have that track record or that industry experience, then the credibility can come from the actual hard asset that is backing the deal or the actual like tangible, legitimate things within the company that kind of brings the credibility to the table where it might be lacking with the actual operator behind it. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I think it makes sense. And we're the credibility, yeah, exactly. It comes from the business, it comes from the hard asset, and it on the another incentive, the credibility is coming from the hard asset, but then also the hard asset, the deal, the business is coming to them. They don't need to do anything for it. They just are presented the seller or the investor, they are presented the deal and all they have to do is just accept it. They don't need to like wait. There's no waiting period. There's no delay. It's just it's like a very standard process for them, and it seems quicker. And again, I guess you still have to deliver on your numbers, on your model, but the deal is there. So
Yeah. So Matt and I were looking at we have a friend that currently owns 24 units. We met him through Instagram. He's buddies with some guys on Bigger Pockets. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that podcast, one of the top real estate podcasts here in the US. So he's buddies with some guys through Bigger Pockets. He lives in San Diego, and Matt and I jumped on a Zoom call with him about 2 months ago, and he's currently 20 years old, and he already has 24 units. And how he's able to do this is through seller financing, right? Because he doesn't have that track record. He can't get a loan traditionally from the bank. So he's finding these deals. He's coming to the owner, they agree on price, and then he's coming to the owner and he's saying, would you be able to front, say it's like $1 million deal, would you be able to put up $900,000? Could I put up 30K, or could I put up 100K? You put up 900, and then we agree on the price, and then I'll repay you back over time. So that's pretty awesome, because then you can go find somebody else. So then you find another third party to cover the initial down payment, and then you're kind of just playing Monopoly and putting the deal together yourself without any actual money and capital that you're spending. So pretty fascinating concept, and pretty cool here now that like interest rates are so high, being able to kind of negotiate your own debt structure privately. I think that's really valuable.
yeah, and I think on a broader scope, that's kind of what private credit is, and that's where a lot of financing and businesses are going. You get these big companies to finance in as opposed to private equity. There's a lot of the momentum has swung towards private credit, and because private credit is so broad that their investment strategies, they're not held to a mandate like a traditional bank or anything like that. They can loan the money to the sponsor or to the company, and their investment time horizon doesn't have to be 5 to 7 years. It can be 10, it can be 12. Their investment goals can be different, and it's private credit opens up a lot more options than like a bank loan per se. So we're all talking about credit in the same umbrella. It's just on what scale with what asset and the means in which you use leverage.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems pretty interesting, and it just goes to show like how many there's money out there to be put to use, and there's deals to be done. So
Yeah, and I think on top of that too, well, I guess I'm curious to hear how you'd respond, but do you think most people, because like there's money out there, it's for the most part, it's not that hard to wrap your head around the concept, and not that hard if you actually like look and find a deal to find one that's going to work out. Do you think a reason why people don't do it is they're afraid of failure, or do you think they are afraid of success even? I know I've actually came across that interesting idea where people are actually afraid to start having things come together because they're not used to it. They're not something that's comfortable with them. So why do you think there's a lack of action for most people when it comes to trying to chase some of their investment goals, some of their business goals?
I think people can constantly make excuses for themselves, um, subconsciously or even consciously, whether it be, oh, they can say, oh, that's them, but that will never be me. Oh, the percentages of that happening aren't going to happen. Oh, here's reason not to do it. A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3, I, 2I. IV, like the people. There's unlimited reasons why people say no to different things, but also beyond that, I think that there's just like limited thinking of the future and not
That's so good.
and just a fixed mindset of what's in front of you and not really preparing or planning for anything beyond a few hours from now, a few days from now, a few weeks from now. And I know that this is sometimes that it's that I've gotten into this mindset, especially when you get into routines. Like routines are good, but you kind of go on autopilot with routines. And the day, all the days blend together, the weeks blend together to where you just like do the same things, hang out with the same people. And then if you're in a good rhythm, then that's good. Like for me, like I went on autopilot like during my Yale semesters. It was just like grind, 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 just get through it. And I didn't really have this perspective of just being able to take a step back and A, enjoy the moment, or B, think for the future. It was just kind of like an autopilot. And I think that's one thing that leads to a lot of like honestly like anxiety and stress for a lot of people. Is just there's just so much to do in life, or they're just not thinking about it, so they just can't handle it.
Mm.
um but the broad scheme of things is that the ability to, I think, A, enjoy the present, be present where you are, but also think for the future. And when you don't do either of those, you're just on this like fixed mindset, closed vision, just staying in your lane, not doing anything, where you're not really enjoying the present or preparing for the future. I said that twice, but anyway, you get it.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I think that's why it's so important to surround yourself with people that achieve more than you and that live the lifestyle you want to live. Because not only are you picking up on their habits and their language, their dialect, but you pick up on their mindset too. And you start to realize what wealthy people think about and how they view the world. There's an interesting quote,
Mm-hmm.
and it's by Socrates, and it says, "You should challenge every belief that you have, especially those you don't think to challenge." Right. So I think a big
Mm-hmm.
part of like having this growth mindset is like, is this belief that I currently have, like, is that wrong, or is it like, is there a better way to think about that?
Mm-hmm.
Is there another is there something that's going to actually serve me, right? Because like a lot of beliefs I think we have are stuff that's going to keep us in that cycle and stuff that's not going to serve us long term.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The, that made me think of like there's you can also like fit like in all information in the world into like three baskets. You can fit it into the things you know, and the things you know you don't know, and the things you don't know that you don't know.
Hmm.
Are you following so far?
100%. Yeah.
So obviously, like the things you know, like for most people, it's going to be like basic, like math, writing, reading, what your job functions, how to cook to an extent, how to live your life to an extent. Maybe if you read, then you're interested in those topics. Whatever it is, very very big is probably out of all the things in the universe, it's probably 0.01% of all knowledge, but it's 99% of your universe. And then there's the things you don't know, which is, oh, like, oh, I know of quantum physics and I know of like structures of like buildings, but I don't really know how it works. You don't really know the processes, you don't know the details, you don't know the fundamentals. And then there's just a whole, and then probably 99% of things in all the universe, you have no idea how they work, and you don't even know, you don't have an effing clue on what the deal is about anything.
Right.
and it's so outside of your like sphere of influence, you don't even know that you don't know it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's it I think being aware of the limited information you have, but also the amount of information there is like it can be fruitful for like life going forward, because like I think staying, if we can tie these two topics together in a fixed mindset, you know what you know, and that's what you do. In a growth mindset, you know what you don't know. You're constantly turning what you don't know into what you know, and you're constantly turning what you don't know that you don't know into things you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in the that's how that's how you start surrounding yourself with like the people, the books, the what you listen to, what you do, who you are, like that's when personal, not necessarily wealth, but personal development occurs.
Like you can tell if someone isn't very smart if they think they know it all.
Right.
Right? Like intelligence starts at accepting that you're never gonna know more. And like the more you grow, like what I'm hearing is like the more you grow, the more your capacity to grow increases. Like the more intelligence you have, the more you realize the intelligence that's out there. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. That's another good way to put it for sure.
yeah, fascinating concept for sure. And I think like it's the easiest ways. Like if you're around someone, if they think they know everything, right? They aren't going to have the humility to realize that they have to grow, right? So Ed Milet taught me this interesting concept, and it's about just balancing confidence and humility, and they're both important when it comes to growth, right? So why
Mm-hmm.
confidence is important is because you have to have confidence in yourself that you can grow and that you can improve and that you're someone that can learn new things and have a different mindset, right? So you need that confidence, but then you need the humility to realize that you need to grow and that the person you are now isn't the person that's going to eventually achieve the goals and the dreams and the lifestyle you want to eventually achieve. So it's
Mm-hmm.
confidence knowing that you can grow, but the humility knowing that you need to grow. So it's being able to
Mm-hmm.
balance both of those that I think that's the sweet spot.
Yeah. I think I think what you said is I'm just thinking about it from the like the Christian perspective, like the idea that like the more we grow closer to God, the more we realize that we need like the need for a savior. And like there,
That's true.
like you talk to a fair weather Christian, they're like, "Oh, I'm doing great. Like I've got this going on. I'm not swearing." Like it's very it could be like legalism or moralism, whatever it is. They're just like, "Oh, like me and God are close, yeah." But then like the more you dive into it, or the more I dive into it, me personally, like you're like, "Oh wow, like I I'm sometimes jealous, I'm prideful, I sin in the things that I don't do, and I sin in the things that I do, and that is just like a even more need for who like Jesus and what he did on the cross. And it's a human, and with that you have a constant like dichotomy of grace and uh like fear of who God is, and not scared of fear, but fear and like respect.
Mm-hmm.
And it's knowing that like you're saved, but also that like the through that, or or let me back up, because of what Jesus did and how great God is, you can never do that, so you are more aware of God's grace and you're more in need of it. But that gives you confidence because it's not it's not you, it's God, it's Jesus who's there. And
Mhm.
it's just like a constant like repentance, grace, repentance, grace, repentance, grace of like the Christian faith of knowing that you need Jesus, but also like being wrapped up in like the love that he has for you.
Yeah, that's so good.
Mm-hmm.
That's so good. That made me think of another topic similar but different, and actually heard it on this Christian podcast, and they were mentioning how people that deal within fraud in like that work for banks, that work for companies that like handle currency, how they deal with fraud and like the people to see if it's fake money or if it's like fraudulent money is
Mm-hmm.
they study the actual currency as much as possible, right? So they're not studying the fraudulent currency, they're not studying the fake currency, they just study the real dollar. And they want to be so familiar with that dollar, and they want to know how its crispiness, its weight, they want to know how it reflects off the light, so that when something does come across that plate that they aren't familiar with, that they're able to recognize it and know that it's not real. So you don't study what's fraudulent by studying what's fraudulent. You study what's
Mm-hmm.
fraudulent about what's studying what's real. And they related that to your relationship with God, because in life, and especially in your faith, you have to know the characteristics of God. You have to know the how God speaks to his sons and daughters. You have to know what that conversation is like, so that when you start hearing the adversary start to speak things into your life, you can kind of recognize it, you can see that pattern, and you can be able to
Mm-hmm.
address it at the source. So that kind of made me think of that topic a little bit different, change of pace here, but what are your thoughts there?
Mm-hmm. Well, the a lot of things have been coming out about like the the Washington State shooter. Are you familiar with this?
No, actually, I'm not familiar with it. No.
So I don't know exactly how long ago it was. I think it was like maybe 2 months ago, 3 months ago. This Washington State University grad student shot three or four University of Idaho students,
Oh yeah, no, I'm familiar with that. Yeah.
and he was a criminology major, and so he's studying how to commit crimes. Like he's a messed up guy, obviously, but he also is in that world of like committing crimes. That just becomes familiar to him. So when something, the adversary comes, whether that be like an impulse or a just like something evil, it's harder to recognize.
Mhm.
And when I was listening to a pastor the other day talk about how he liked um he was really into UFC for a while, and he liked it. It was very, it's very technical. There's a lot of strategy involved. They prepare for months to fight one opponent, and it's like this big ordeal, and it's just basically one on one, no rules. But then he was like, if somebody raises their voice at me and if I let my temper go for a second, like if I'm in the UFC world and I keep on seeing people punch each other, people kick each other, people do all these things, like is that healthy for me to continue to see? Like how and if I were to react in a negative way after seeing that input of UFC, and for me it would probably be like my like thing would probably be like if I'm watching like rom-coms or like sitcoms all day, just like if I were to like how I what I input, whether it be like music, TV, movies, just everyday life will reflect what I output, and it just makes it so much more important like what you're feeding yourself every day. Um and just how how susceptible people are to the inputs in their life, good and bad.
Yeah. Yeah, you gotta be a gatekeeper in what goes in your ears. right? Like get good in, get good out. Honestly, why if I ever watch a movie on Netflix, which is rare, I only watch comedy, right? I won't watch something that's rated R, not because I don't find it entertaining. It's just like kind of like what you're going off of, like what is that telling my brain that like murder is okay, or that even like sex outside of marriage is normalized, right? Like stuff like this, stuff that I'm not um definitely like something that I'm not
Subscribe,
aligned.
not stuff you don't subscribe to, you shouldn't be around.
Right. Yeah, that's the best way to put it for sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um yeah, fascinating stuff for sure.
Mm-hmm. So one of the other conversations we had in the car this afternoon was if you were to start a private equity company, what you would call it. And they're like, well, would you want to put your name on it?
Yes.
Would you want to, like, a lot of private equity companies are like something rock, something stone. And then there's also a lot of private equity companies that are like Greek gods and Roman gods and stuff like that. And I was thinking, like, if you put your name on like it, if you put your name on like private equity company like Erickson Brothers Capital, like the exit strategy might be limited
Oh,
to like the ultimate exit strategy when we say, hey, we're wrapping this thing up, tying it in a bow, throwing it under the tree, and then whoever wants it can have like our portfolio of companies. Is that going to be harder to sell than
yes.
something with like a brand name like a BlackRock or an Apollo or an Ares? So my question to you is, where do you fall in that? And B, what would you call your private equity company?
Um well, a big thing for me is legacy. Aries. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's sick. A big thing for me is legacy. Like I want to be remembered. Um, one of my goals is I want to build a hospital in a city.
Mm-hmm.
Like I want to have a business school named after me. Not because like I need that recognition, but I am motivated by it, and I want to be able to glorify God through me, and I want people to look at me and be like, wow, look how great God was in Jeff's life because of the outcome he got. So that's kind of my perspective around it. So initially, yes, I would want my name on the company. It is interesting you saying like in terms of the exit strategy, and I think you're right. But honestly, if it's something, I look at private equity, I look at like owning real estate as something that you're not going to sell. And if it's a good enough deal, it's something that you're going to buy and hold, right? So Warren Buffett says, and we may have already talked about this on the podcast, but Warren Buffett says the money isn't made on the buy or the sell, it's made on the hold. So I want to be able to buy something and then make money 20, 30, 40, 50 years through holding it.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually something I want to be able to give to my kids. If I'm honest, like I eventually want to be able to pass something down for my kids to be able to run it one day. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I do see the value in calling it something a little bit different. But like also, is private equity companies, is that something that needs to be client facing? Is that something where you need to have a brand image?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Because like public companies that are getting taken private, or these massive private companies that are going from like sponsor to sponsor, getting bought out, they want to know that the company is uh it that has a good name behind it. It's like a name comes with name comes reputation, it comes value. There's tons of things like it, like if you go to like an Apollo or an Ares, you know that the smartest people are there. Or if you're at a BlackRock or Blackstone, or um a lot of private equity companies in Colorado are like Platinum River or something like that.
Riverbrook Capital or something.
Like Stonebrook River stream
Free,
elite
free
climb.
stream. So true. So funny.
So there's a lot of weight in a name.
Okay. All right.
Um,
That's fair.
because it's like the talent you attract from like a employee standpoint, but also from like a deal flow standpoint. Because at the end of the day, it is like a bidding process, um, for like companies that are getting sold to other companies, um, and the name does matter.
Cool.
So, uh, yeah, yeah, that was another interesting conversation. But you brought something up. Oh yes, about giving stuff to your kids. I think what I want to give to my kids is definitely like opportunity, because like I think the our parents did a great job of giving us opportunity. Like I was able to pursue baseball to the full capacity, whether it was like going to Tread or going to Yale. Like the resources that I needed or what I thought was best in order to get the best at baseball, like were provided by our parents. Um, like the most like the Camry that I drove that you now drive, provided by the parents. Like I think the opportunity is important, but um I think I don't really want them to stand on any ground that's not their own. Because yeah, I want to set them up for success, but I also know that if I just give them everything, then they're gonna end up um just as poor off, not poor, poor in spirit, maybe not poor in financially, but they're gonna end up worse off in the long run if I just give them everything. And the kids that we competed against in high school, Jeff, were the kids that were given everything. And they might be given everything and they're just like stagnant, right? They end up, no offense, they end up becoming D3 baseball players at the okay schools, but like you start out here and you put them on an upward trajectory, then like at some point they just get passed
Mhm.
because they were given this much, so they only feel like they need to work this hard. But if you're given this much, then you feel like you just need to work hard, and that working hard is the thing that's going to propel them beyond, and help them out ultimately in their life. So that's where I kind of fall into it. And I also want to enjoy the fruits of my labor. I don't need to leave anything. Um, so I think at the end of my life, I'll just give it away to my, I guess, like to an extent, like whether it be like obviously a little bit to my family, but also like to churches and to uh, organizations that I want to support. So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, all wealth is on average destroyed by the third generation anyway. So 3 generations from the person who created the wealth, typically it's all gone. So wealth isn't transferred through money, it's transferred through knowledge. And I think you explained that really well. Um, and yeah, there's this interesting magic card that I heard about. And you listen to this podcast too, but there's this magic card called in Magic the Gathering. It's called Dying Wish. And it said the man asked for the greatest weapon in the world, but for not the ability to weld it or to wield it. Right. So it's like you ask for the greatest thing in the world, like you ask for all of this wealth, you have all this wealth, but you don't know how to use it. It's going to be worthless. All right. If you don't have the knowledge to go make it yourself. So I definitely think that you kind of have to find that balance to where you can create a platform for your kids to succeed and give them every opportunity that you can. But at the same time,
But also, I think not maybe not giving them opportunity, but also allowing them to take opportunity.
Hmm.
Because in our case, we took opportunity. Like our
Right.
parents hand us opportunity. They didn't give us much to begin with. I mean, they gave us a lot. They gave us everything, but it was also like, here's what you could do, and we went out and took it. And I think there's there's opportunity that goes to waste all the time. Um, I think that like you were saying, it is like a balancing act, but uh, I think that there's also a difference between being given an opportunity and going and finding an opportunity, hunting it down, bolting, like busting down the door and saying, like, here it is, I'm going to take it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. For like, for all the parents that are listening out there, um, there might be parents listening. I don't know. For all the parents that
probably
are
a
out
few
there,
100,000
yeah,
at this.
at this point, um, think about it like this: if you give your kid a car, or if you give a kid a job or a possession, you're depriving your kid of the ability to get that on his own and the ability to overcome that struggle and to have that dopamine, to have that feeling of accomplishment if you give it to them. So you're depriving them of something like, honestly, some of my greatest childhood memories were overcoming these battles and starting this lawn mowing company when we were in middle school and buying our first car when we were in high school and really having to do all these big things. But like, we would have been deprived of those had our parents given it to us. So,
And I think our parents definitely could have.
oh, easy. Yeah.
And
I mean, it was,
and I
it was
think
a $1,000 car. So like, it wasn't
and I
any.
think we were very well aware of that. They were like, "Oh, that's just not what our parents do."
Right.
So
Cool. Cool.
every point imaginable is given in honor to Eric and Sue. So
Yeah. And
mhm.
I honestly think, like, looking back at it, like, our dad taught us how to accumulate wealth, like, very,
Hopefully,
very well. And
hopefully,
he taught us that at a young age. I guess only time will tell.
only time will tell. But hey,
Um,
we're sloping up.
but here's the
We
thing. I think we can say
don't.
that because someone wouldn't be listening to this conversation that we're having had we not, if we don't accumulate the wealth in the future. So by the very fact that somebody's listening to this conversation means we have at least done something good with our lives.
Right. Well, also one of my old coaches said it's not if something happens, it's when something happens.
Yeah.
And he was all about the process. He was all about putting in the work to where it's not if we win the Ivy League title, or it's not if we go to regional, or it's not if we uh, beat Cal or beat Stanford. It's not if, it's you put the work in the summer, in the fall, and in the winter training, that it just becomes a win. So when people are listening to this, we'll say February 11th, 2028, that they
2020.
can just say,
Oh, I was like 2028. Oh, you're talking about in the future.
yes, when. It's
Okay.
not an if people will listen, it's when it happens, whenever it is. Like we know that the we were putting in the work and we were putting in that process starting day one, whenever that was. So I think we can close off there. I'm getting a FaceTime call.
Okay, that's probably a good place to end. Yeah, before we wrap up, like we always do, quick rundown. Anything exciting? Anything you're looking forward to in the week that you want to talk about, and anything you may have accomplished this previous week too. Quick
Yeah.
seconds on that.
So last week was a grind of a week for me. Um, like I only worked 60 hours last week, so it wasn't that bad. But a lot of times people who work 60 hours, they're like not doing stuff for the entire 60, or the guys that work 100, they're like sitting around for a portion of that. And I just felt like I was just grinding for 60 hours straight every single day, or 60 hours is an entire week, just grinding. And I also kind of got to a point where in my job when I started out, I knew I was excited, I was eager to learn, but I didn't know what I didn't know. And I'm starting to get into that process of now I know what I don't know, which is daunting, exciting. Yeah, I'm pumped to be there, pumped to learn, but just continuing to turn what I don't know into what I know. And that's ultimately what we're here for. It's just to learn. So